Hi everyone, good morning. This is Saturday, April the 8th. It is the second Saturday of the month, so it is our Mentee Mixer for Diversity in Dentistry Mentorships. We are continuing with our goal of trying to increase the applicant pool for diverse students into the field of dentistry. The main thing with diversity in dentistry, we're trying to help everyone that is interested in dentistry, starting from middle school all the way to the first few years of your career. So, so I will go ahead and get started. I have this is very informal. So please, if at any time you need to ask a question or you need to chime in somewhere, please go ahead and do so. It is not a closed Zoom. The recording will be shared after that you can share. If you think this will benefit anyone, please do invite them to join us. Technically, it is supposed to be for the assigned mentees. But if you think this information will be helpful to anybody, we are not gatekeeping at all to invite anyone you think will be helpful. This can be helpful, but it is an added benefit for the mentees and the mentors to have something special for us. So I am going to share, as usual, it is not official until it has a PowerPoint. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint I made. It is mainly just to highlight the things I think that is important for us to consider. Deciding to go to dental school is a huge deal. I think it is even more important to choose where you will go, because this is 4 years that there's so many nuances that you don't look into until it might be. There's so many nuances that you need to consider. So I always like to start with our quote: may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears. The whole application process includes a lot of fears. But if you can go into this with hope and not fear, it will change your outlook in such a great way. Um, from my perspective, you need a school list, not just because it costs $120 to apply, but because there are 66, now 67 schools that you need to choose from. It is good to have like considerations and not have, but have considerations to narrow down your list, but have some flexibility, which is what I will consider your exceptions. So for making the school list, um, your school list should very much reflect what you have going on at that point. Uh, for instance, if I know I am very much interested in like the clinical side of things, if I know my focus should be on like the clinical information that I can get from that school, it does not benefit me to look at a school that is focusing on research. If I know I have this background as a dental assistant or a specialist dental assistant for a while, I know I can put myself out there more. If I know I'll need a little bit of hand holding, it will not benefit me to apply to a school that has like 120. It will benefit me to look for a school that has a class size that can help what I need. Um, a lot of the I was one of those. I am guilty of that. I was one of those that went online and went to these forums and looked at people's profiles that are applying to schools, and I'll be like, that definitely is a no for me. That definitely kicks me out. But consider that the schools look at a holistic approach. They look at the whole applicant, not just your grades. So what do I have as a whole person that will make me stand out aside from my grade? That is where your personal statement comes in. Now we have that recording on your personal statement. And also, um, the whole process, it's very expensive, extremely expensive. So when you're making your list, look at how much you can afford. For me, I knew I could not apply for more than 8 schools. So I had to bring my list down to 8 schools. I knew because that 8 school was 800 and something dollars. I knew that was it for me. I knew I had to pay for this because that is just for the application. Understand that most schools have secondaries that you have to pay for. Understand that if for some reason this school was not in your list when you took your DATs, you're paying to get your DAT sent to them. Just understand the fees that are associated and how much you can afford at that time. And then location. For your considerations, consider the location. You're going to be here for the next 4 years. Location, location, location. If you have arthritis, if you have allergies, you cannot be applying to schools in a region that you know add to the challenge of school. If you study better in certain weathers, I went to undergrad in Wisconsin. I struggled through the winter. It would not make sense for me to apply to a dental school in Wisconsin. That is just for me. I struggle with winters. It would not make sense for me to choose a school where I know half of the year I'm going to be dealing with cold weather. A very big thing is the school curriculum. The school I'm going to, Texas Tech in El Paso, we started the clinic your first year. I knew I needed those hand skills. I knew for what I wanted, I need to perfect my hand skills quick. It was tough for me for the curriculum that starts you early in clinic. There are some schools that are heavy on research. If you are interested in research, it is important to look at such curriculums. There are some schools that are still developing an X-ray film. For some people, that is important for them. For me, I know I would like to be more digital. It's very possible to find out the school curriculum because right now there's a lot of students on social media. The websites are usually updated. Look at that curriculum and see if it works with your study method. Because whatever study method worked for you, you have to update it for dental school. Whatever study method, you have to update it for dental school. Believe me. And also the school culture. How accessible like when you reach out with questions, how quickly do they respond? When you talk to the students, how do they feel about that school? Is that something you can put up with? Because this is like the 4 most important years of your dental career. Where do you want that developed in? Is that culture something you can mesh with? For minorities, for a lot of minorities, to us, it is Meharry, it is Howard. Those are like schools that we know we can quickly fit in. The culture will benefit us. There is many more. Those are the ones that I know. Does the school culture merge with what you will work for you? And then the money. Who the money? How much does that school cost? The money, like we all know there's some schools that are 160 a year. Can you afford that? At this point in your life, if it's just you and you're like, ooh, when I finish, I can handle that. What if you start a family right after? How much you pay for school? How does that? Do not let the money for school become a barrier in your career growth. So consider that while you make that list. That way you don't overburden yourself. What worked for me, the tips are what worked for me and for the people I know. It is important to develop a plan. Applications open in June. For me, it helped in saving $100 here, $50 here. I knew, as I mentioned, I knew I could not afford to apply to more than 8 schools. I found out how much it cost for that 8 schools. I figured out how much to pay for the supplemental applications. Do the supplemental applications need an AC as well? What they entail? How much time do I need for that? And I made my spreadsheet with how much each one cost, how much time each is going to take, and how I'm going to budget, not just my time, but my money and my mental capacity to handle it. And that ties in with setting your goal and making those action steps. I was applying while I was doing a master's program. So my goals had to fit in with my coursework because as we all know, It is a holistic approach. We're not searching what the schools are looking for. We know what the schools are looking for. You might present the good, the great, the best package, but it just might not be it for you. So you need to have that backup plan. So as you're setting up your goals, setting up your action steps, make sure it merges with what you need to achieve. A big one, the one that was like the game changer for me, was getting a support system that works, which for me was getting a mentor. Your family is helpful, your social support system is helpful, but are they familiar with the application process or the rigors of dentistry and how that applies to you? You don't need to find that while you're in dental school. It is, to me, it was more important to find that before, because they will help me with what is needed in that step because they have gone through that step. And I have mentioned several times the application opens in June. You should know what day the application open, what day is the deadline for that school. I need to have my personal statement done by this time. I need my supplemental ACs done by this time. When you set those target dates on your goal and action steps, it makes it so much easier to measure your progress. For instance, if I say my personal statement should be done by May, I should have my killer intro and my killer closing, and then I'll work on the content in between. By May, I know that by May, that is what I need to have done. I know my list needs to be narrow by this time. When those target dates are set right, it makes it a lot easier to measure progress. It is very easy to get overwhelmed and not follow up. But if you have like achievable action steps, which is what we went over with our SMART goal setting, if you have the achievable steps, it makes it easier to set your targets and to measure your progress because it's important. And I think that is all I wanted to share. I don't want to take too much time because I don't want to take too much time because I want to open it up for questions. So that is narrowing it down from my perspective. Do any of you have anything to share or questions?
Hi.
Hi, Ashley.
Okay. Regarding the application section, specifically the manual dexterity part of the application,
Mhm.
um, what, like, I don't want to say things, but like, what qualities or traits do you feel like would be, you know, would look good on your application?
Yes. Oh, for 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 my school, right? We start in the clinic like way too early. Understand that as a dentist, this is your biggest asset, your hands. It is how you can, as we call it, like your fine motor skills. For me, it was something like braiding. Like I braid, I bake, I I have a sewing machine that is set up somewhere here. I sew. It is just it is just maximizing your fine motor skills and how you can transfer that into dentistry. Because it is good. It's almost like the PAT section. When I was studying for it, it was like, what do I need this for? But then you have to like move that concept in your brain to like a 3D to an actual thing. So it's that fine motor skills for anything you do with your hands that you know will help you perfect how to use a tiny drill in a very tiny workspace. For me, it was,
Ye-
as I meant, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I'm just trying to, because I'm a dental assistant as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been like trying to figure out like what can I include as far as my manual dexterity. Like some of the things that I do outside of work, like hobby wise, is so I kickbox, but I know like that has to do with hand and eye coordination, but I don't feel like it's like detail oriented.
Like, because it because for like your hand skills, do you do like sewing, knitting? I have a classmate that for her, she was a hairdresser. I have a classmate that was a nail tech.
Okay.
That is what they included. They included, and the nail tech is actually a guy. He's amazing.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yes.
yeah, and also when you think this, hi, it's Dr. Haisha. I think just to also focus on whatever it is, it's not so much what the activity is, it's but
Yes.
how you mentioned, Luma, how you can transfer that by in the when you're writing out that statement, in that question on the application is, I understand how attention to detail is so important in the field of dentistry, with, working in millimeters and, the exactness. So maybe just having that appreciation in all you do, whether it's kickboxing or sewing, that that it's important of where my body is in relationship and in space, just having that awareness. And so they know why why they're asking that question. Does that make sense? So develop more into that explanation versus is just what it is.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
And let's say you have beautiful penmanship. Maybe you could say, I pride myself on my penmanship, is very clear, exact, or and not doesn't necessarily have to be like I do calligraphy, but neatness, organization, and those types of things that are important to you is going to really help you in your dental journey.
Thank you.
I did have a quick question about when it comes to applying to school, and I know, hello, nice to see you again. So I know you mentioned financials, but what about when it comes to the NHSC scholarships where you can do like if I plan on applying to one of those scholarships where you can do service for school, should I kind of, again, I know it's a very competitive process, so I don't know if like I'll get that scholarships, but if that's in my head, do I take the financial aspect out of it? Because in my head, I'm like, okay, I plan on working in public health, so, I'm hoping I can.
So we actually do have a session coming up about like scholarships and
Okay.
And things like that.
Okay.
But you already mentioned it, that it's very competitive and it's not a certainty.
Yeah.
So then it now depends on you if you want to take that risk with your financials. Because for instance, Texas schools are competitive because they're cheap.
Yeah.
My tuition for a year is 40,000. And then if you add living expenses and everything, it comes up to about 80,000.
Mm-hmm.
I know that if I don't get any help, it is 80,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I will use the one that everybody rouse on, NYU. NYU, the average person gets out of NYU with like 600,000. Do I want to get out with 200,000 or with 600,000?
Mm-hmm.
If I get an NHC scholarship, I don't mind that 600,000, but is it certain that I'll get that NHC scholarship? I know the people that go on there, the people that go there have probably very likely have figured out how they're going to handle that. But is that something you want to handle? That depends now on you. For me, I'm very debt adverse. I would not do that. For some people, they can figure out how to handle that, and which is great. But that's why I say it depends on how much you're willing to risk with your future earnings. If you're okay with that, if the NHC scholarship will help and you don't mind if it doesn't help, then fine. If it is a worry for you, I would not study if I know I have that type of a debt. That is on me. There's some people that know they'll get out of school and they will work hard enough, they'll be able to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
That works for them. It just doesn't work for me.
Okay, I see. That makes sense.
Yeah, and Crystal, you know what? I'm gonna put you in touch with Maria. She's one of our interns, and she's a D1 at UCLA. She was awarded this
Scholarship.
the scholarship, yeah. And
Okay.
also Dr. Worrell, who's on our advisory council, yeah, he actually really helped his mentee on applying. So just email us at info so I can get them connected with you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I actually have another question. So something that's been going around in like the pre-dental world is like only apply to schools that are pass fail and like, because it's less stress and this and that. And, what do you think about that sentiment? Because there's some people that are I'm not planning on doing that because I feel like that just shortens the list a lot to, what do you think about the sentiment of, just go for the pass fail when you're applying, and because it lessens the stress?
Which is the important thing to consider, considering like the curriculum of the school while you're applying. But saying that pass fail is less stress is not true. I am in a pass fail school. Believe me, it is not.
I remember you mentioned pass in your school is like an 80%. So it's still like you still need to do well. Yes. It's not like you just float by.
Being pass fail does not make it any easier. It will not be pass. The sentiment that pass fail makes it easier is not. From my experience, is not true. Limiting yourself to pass fail is like more setting up yourself for compliancy. And this is something where you cannot be like compliant, and it has to be your best foot forward all the time. Pass at 80 is not funny.
I see.
And it's so pass fail. It takes away the pressure of like the ranking system. Like, oh, this person was the first in the class. It takes away that pressure, but believe me, without that, there is still that pressure of like, oh, I got a 98%. If it is purely on like your grading system, that is not to me, that is not a reasonable ranking criteria, because it is to me, it is much more of like how the teachers teach, how you'll be evaluated, what I'm going to get more of. But thinking that pass fail will make it easier, not at all.
I see. Okay. And then I had another question. Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I know when it comes to applying to schools, there's a lot of people say, move somewhere where you can see yourself for 4 years and all that. In my mind, when I think about it, which I could be wrong, but does it truly matter? Like I know you have to go to a place where you feel comfortable so you're not miserable and all that. But if I'm only going there for 4 years, do you find most people end up staying in where they went to school, or do they just go back home? Because like, then would it matter if you don't like the state, or like if it's a city or if it's a suburbs, or
I feel like that is very like I feel like the measure of comfort is very subjective. If it's you have to be for me, you have to be comfortable in the school environment. I understand for a lot younger of my classmates, it's like what the nightlife is like, what the food culture is like. If that is important to you, please consider it when you're making your decision. For me, it was what the environment inside the school is, and what connections I can make inside the school. Outside of school, I have way too much going on to put that as the forefront. I am more concerned of within campus, what is going on that helps me. I mentioned.
Yeah, I agree so much. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Go ahead. Yeah, I just totally agree. I echo that.
I mentioned like I have a good friend that is in dental school, but he has arthritis. Going to some place like Wisconsin is like a completely no for him, because when the weather fluctuates, it flares up everything for him. So that will be a consideration for not trying to apply to a Wisconsin school or North Dakota school or any of those cold weather is to be there for 4 years, because half of the year that would not work. For me, it's like purely personal. I just don't like cold. I don't want to deal with it. So I will not go up there for it. So when you're considering comfort, yes, it is good to make sure the food scene is great, the nightlife is great, all of that is great. But if the priority for me is within school, what works, and my professors approachable, can I go into the dean's office if something is bothering me? Can I reach out to, if I talk to an upper class man, how is that being respected? How is that being approached? Because there are some school cultures where if you're a D1, what are you even doing on the D2 lounge? I don't want that. That is what I will consider as, can I deal with that? Am I just limited to my classmates? Is that all my resources?
how did you find yourself kind of finding out about these environments? Because I understand like it's a lot of reaching out and networking with students that go to the school, but sometimes we're just on the outside looking in, and like if the school is like, I don't want to say if the school is painting a picture, but if the school's like, oh, we're inclusive, we're this, we're that, and then you go there and it's a little bit more, for lack of a better word, like cutthroat, like how do we kind of gauge that from the outside as pre-dental students?
It is very easy, like the people that talk a lot and the people that have a great experience or a terrible experience. You always hear from those.
I see.
You always hear from those that are having a great experience, and you always hear from those that are having a bad experience. As you mentioned, the reaching out is amazing. Reach out, ask. The worst thing they can do is ignore you.
That's true. That's true.
But do put yourself out there, reach out, ask. And then most schools, almost every school I know of, has a pre-dental day. It has an SNDA day. If it's some school you're interested in, if they do not have it in person, especially after COVID, there is a virtual component. Attend it. There will be the students that will paint it as like this is the heaven on earth. But believe me, you will hear from that one person who is saying that this is a pit of hell. You will get it all.
Yeah.
Every school has a pre-dental day. If it's not organized by the school itself, it's organized by a student organization. If it's a school you're considering, find out. They'll have that pre-dental day.
Yeah.
If you miss that, if for some reason you apply and you're invited to the interview, you can tell. You can tell, like from the moment you walk in, you can tell.
Okay.
You can tell. They usually, most interviews have like that section where you have like a lunch with the students. You can tell, regardless of how bad you are at reading people, you'll be able to tell.
It's like a feeling that you get or something.
Yes, because then you see how, if the approach is condescending or as an equal, you can tell. But there are pre-dental days. There are people on social media that are willing to share the truth about what they're experiencing. That is why, for the most part, I think it's like a rite of passage. Most D1s create their Instagram page.
Oh yeah.
There are people online where you can tell. The schools will organize that. If you did not do that before getting the interview, during your interview, as much as they're finding out about you, it is your opportunity to find out about them. It is two-way.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And then, so another question when it comes to like the school list sense. So once you get past curriculum and environment and financials, and you get to the stats portion, I know a lot of times it goes, I've heard it both ways, because I do a little bit of over researching when it comes to certain things, but I've seen it both ways, where some people say, you know what, don't look at your stats and cut yourself short, apply, because you never know, it's a spectrum, you know, there's people on both sides of it. But then I've also seen it saying, just don't, if you see that your stats do not match up to the school, then don't waste your money, don't apply to the school. Where do you think people should kind of fall on that scale?
Which is where researching the school itself comes from. Most schools I know have think about this, right? Most admission committees are very busy September to December. And then January to May, they're very laid back. Send that email.
I see.
Send that email, because a lot of schools look at the whole body. They look at the whole person, not just your stats. And then that's where your personal statement comes in. It is not some system that is in there like dropping out, oh, if you got a 16 in this section, you're out.
I see. They
will look at that, and someone else will read your personal statement. So reach out, because the schools will let you know if we are strictly by this or if we'll consider a holistic approach. But if you have checked and they confirm to you that there is a holistic approach, a benefit even when reaching out to admission committees, that when your application does come in, they're like, oh, I saw this name, what did she say this time? But we consider if the school is strictly by the numbers, because there are some schools that are like that, or if this school consider a holistic approach. I will say this as someone who is in a Texas school. Online, a lot of people talk about how Texas is purely by the numbers. It is not. They look at the whole person. Texas schools do not even, it is encouraged to have a bachelor's degree, it's not required.
Okay.
They look at the whole person. But a lot of places will tell you, ooh, if you don't have a 21, don't even think of applying to a Texas school. That is not true. Reach out to the schools. The admission committees are excited that you're even trying to reach out to get more details. Reach out. You will know from the school if you're looking at the numbers or if you're looking at the whole person.
I see.
Because some people I know that got the 27s in the DATs are struggling with the content of dental school. Some people I know that got 16 on 2 sections are actually picking it up. The numbers matter. I'm not saying the numbers do not mean a thing. The numbers matter, but more schools than you think will consider the whole person.
I see. Okay. And then, okay, my last question. This more has to do with, okay, I promise this is my last one.
It's okay.
This more has to do with.
That's why we're here. That's why we're here. Ask away.
Okay.
Dr. Ella, do you have anything to add about that numbers approach to school or holistic approach?
Oh, no, you covered it really well. Just don't be discouraged. Just apply. Just apply. Yeah, I think there's so many factors, your involvement. I always say, like, find out when they're having some outreach programs. And if you're able to go to the schools and volunteer, just connecting your face with the name and call and asking questions. I think that's the most important thing. So you're familiar with the committee and the students there. We could vouch for you.
Okay, got it. All right. And then Luma, I remember on the other Zoom, you mentioned that your school is very, modern and updated. You guys are scanning instead of doing impressions and, getting to do all that right as you start running, you just get to do all that. Was that something you looked into when you were looking at schools? Because I know there's some schools that are still like a little bit not as, modernized and all that.
Yes. So for me, I scheduled I scheduled the interview at the school as my last interview because from my interaction with them, from everything else, I was like, this is like the perfect fit, but I'm not going to let it block whatever other opportunities can be available. I talked about the culture. For a lot of us minorities, it's Howard Mehari. I love Mehari. I was not going to let this amazing picture block what I knew was amazing. But for me, it was important because everything is going digital. I worked in health information technology. I understood that transformation that was coming. If you can get in the first people, like those of us that did health IT in 2009, when Obamacare just passed, it was on compared to those that were coming after. If you can get in with new technology that you understand it, to the point like people are paying money to go learn how to use an endopilot. That is what we are learning endodontics with an endopilot. If you can be on the forefront of transformation, to me, understanding the change that technology is making, that would be better. That was like a big deal for me with this school, like understanding the curriculum and how it will help me further down. So, which is why I highlighted the curriculum. The curriculum should not just be pass fail. It should be what you're getting out of it. For me, I know that there are these scanning programs that people are paying money to go do after school. There are these, like for instance, our prosthodontics classes is like all like digital. There is this digital dentistry classes that I have friends that are in dentistry already that are struggling, that are trying to learn that, but it's something that I will be taught in my school. That was important to me.
I see. Okay. All right, that makes sense. Yeah, that's definitely something that I want to make sure I research when I'm making my list as well.
Dr. Lila, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm sorry. No, you're doing great. I love listening. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it just because if I brought up my dental school 20 years ago, we were still on benches. Our typodonts had a pole coming out. Yeah, we did not have any endo pilot or anything like that. So it's exciting to see how the innovation in the schools and the new schools. And yeah, unfortunately, some schools aren't funded as well as others.
Well, yes.
And that does hurt your, your clinical experience and what you can take with you. So not ruling anything out, but just take that into consideration.
Okay. Thank you guys. Okay, I think that was the last of my questions.
And also as you're making the list, do understand that I remember in 2021, then it was like Lincoln University. It was like the new university at that time. And they were like really trying to get enrollment and they were reaching out and everybody's like, ooh, this doesn't feel right. Do understand that they're new schools and use your own use your own judgment in like figuring out what is important for those new schools and how it aligns with what you want. Because like right now, Kansas City University is opening a new school in Joplin, Missouri. And they're like really interested in like diversifying their student body. So as you're making your list, do make sure you include that. Because like look into them. I think like for like Lincoln University that opened in Tennessee, the outreach lady was like really out there trying to like get people to come see what they are about. When you do see things like that, do take advantage of it. It doesn't hurt. The worst thing is that you get that information and you say it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be like me, like as my school was a new school, they only had one class in and most people were like, what are you doing with a new school? But we toured their sim lab, we toured their clinic. I saw what they were doing with their first years and I'm like, okay, that's it for me. I know some people were like hesitant about going to like really second class, but if Kansas City University, if they're big on diversity, if they choose to do an open day, I will want to attend to see what they're about.
I see. Yeah, that's definitely something. I didn't realize there was a new one opening in Missouri, but I'll definitely look into that.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually had a chance to speak with the dean. And it is a priority, and I can tell it's genuine. And seeing the rendering of their future location is amazing. It really is amazing. So keep that into consideration for anyone, because it goes back to your original question on, do you need to go to school where you see yourself living? I really don't think so. I really don't. I mean, some schools like, I don't know if state schools may have a higher admittance of students from, who are, who live there in the state. But I know for me, I ended up somewhere else in another state after I went to dental school.
I see. Okay, that's good insight. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything? Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Actually,
so she just said no.
No, I feel like Crystal covered everything.
Thank you, Crystal.
I appreciate you. You did it for the team. Thank you, Pre-Dent. But I do want to say, just like Crystal mentioned, the NHS National Health Service Corps Scholarship. Dr. Hashaw, if you don't mind, can you send me that information?
Yeah, I was thinking of that too. I'll send it to both of you guys.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna do an email, introduce you guys to them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Worrell is amazing. He's like really helpful.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Serving on the council this year. Yeah.
Yes. But then like the main ideas is just like make a plan, make your action steps achievable. Like that is the main one. Make your action steps achievable. Make a plan. Try to get everything done in advance. Like please get everything done in advance. As someone mentioned, Interfolio, I use Interfolio. We will have the templates out on like how to ask for shadowing, how to ask for a letter of recommendation. Do get those started early, please.
I do have a question about Interfolio. So I know another thing that's been going around the pre-dental world is not using Interfolio because I guess it doesn't look right if you use a letter, if you just upload it rather than I don't know. So what do you think?
I use Interfolio. Majority of my classmates use Interfolio. Majority of my pre-dental school group that we apply together use Interfolio. I've used it recently for something. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
It is at $49, but for me, it was $49 well spent.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and it does have reminders for the recommenders, you know. I mean, so it's not always coming from you, like harassing them.
Okay.
Yes, and also it gives you the chance to have your letters of recommendation way in advance. I know people that could not submit that year because they did not get your letters of recommendation in time. It will be very painful to complete your application and then you're not considered because you don't have your letters of recommendation. Get them out in time. If you've not started your personal statement, please get started on it. That is important. There are a lot of like supplemental essays or supplemental writing prompts, which is what I shared the other time. The application system is not open. Log in, look at the prompts, get started with your responses. Money, look at how much it costs for each school. Like I think last year or the year before, Diversity in Dentistry even like gave out scholarships to apply for an extra school. It is so expensive. And that is not just the application fee, it is the application fee, the supplemental fee. And then what if they call you for an interview? Your transportation fee, your accommodation, like plan that money, like plan it down to the last penny. Because the most painful thing is to get called for an interview next week and you cannot afford it. Plan it down to the last penny. Understand that for most schools, even when they do offer you that admission, you have 30 days to put that deposit of $1,000 for most schools. Get your calculator down. If you're not somebody that likes to plan your finances, plan it. Like plan it down to the last cent. When you apply for that school, go on Travelocity, Cheapway, whatever you use to find your flight. Find that flight, figure out how much. Yes. Figure out how much it's going to cost you. Plan that money for application, for during application, for interviews, for your deposit. Plan it. Like I beg of you, because a lot of people missed out because they did not plan that financial. And after that, plan for school life. When we got in, we had to buy a computer that was $2,500. Your loops, the cheapest loops you can get if you don't need a prescription like me, is at least $1,000. Plan for all that. Get started now. Plan it. Because financial stress is not an additional stress you want. Plan it. Plan your finances. Make your goals bite-sized. Measure your progress each step of the way and narrow down that list. Like put every school you like to get into, look into that school, see how it merges with you, and then you start knocking off some, adding on some. But narrow it down. That way, when it comes June, you know, I'm applying for this one because of this. I'm applying for this one. If they call me for an interview, I have my transport, I have the money for the supplemental. Just narrow it down. It will take away so much stress if you do the stressing now than if you start doing that stressing in June. But
I'm curious, can you guys share how many schools you're planning to apply to?
Yeah, I was thinking about 10 because I feel like that's a kind of a wide
round number.
Yeah. I'm hoping I would like to stay under 10, but I'm the type of person that maybe if I get like, okay, maybe I should just do one more just to be, I don't know. But right now I have 10 that I'm trying to narrow down and figure out like, okay, would I want to move across the country or would I, want to stay on the East Coast near my family and, trying to figure out that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about applying to possibly in between 7 to 8 schools.
Yeah, I think 8 is a good number. And I think 10 is great, Crystal, really, honestly. Yeah, I think you'll be prepared.
I do have one more question. I came up with another one. Okay. So this is a question that I see, again, I have like we have this little pre-dental chat. It's a question that I see come up a lot. It's not necessarily one that I am battling right now, but it comes to specialties when making your school list. I know some people, I always hear that by the time you get through that specialty in school, you're going to change your mind. So there's no point in even like, but would you say putting into account a school's specialization rates, or like if they have specialties at the school, because I've heard schools that have specialties, sometimes you get less clinical experience because the specialties are getting sent to the residents.
Yeah.
You know, what do you kind of think about that whole specialty topic?
All of that has a lot of elements of truth in it, but that should not be defining for you.
Yeah, it should, and I think is beneficial to, like, they have a strong pediatric program, and that's when you want to go to. There's usually one resident selected from that dental school at least. And I think the cases that are being referred to the postdoc programs, they're going to be way too complex for you to do in dental school.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're losing any cases. I think dental schools that are not in areas that have a high need not the best, because you just don't have enough patients in general for all the dental students. So finding schools that are in the pocket of the city where there's a high need, and underserved areas as well, so that you can get experience. But I would, if there's a school that you like and they have a specialty program that is top, then that should be the top of your list.
And also for me, like, I got into dental school with an intention of doing a specialty, but I got in with the understanding that I am going to get everything from any school to be a good dentist. And then it is up to me to work on that specialty. It is not up to every dental school trains you to be a general dentist, not a specialist. It is up to you to use your resources at that school, because the residency is a whole new application. And true. For me, let me skin this good that I have now, and I'll figure out the other good when I get there. The most important thing is getting into that dental school and getting the most from it. Because when you try to prioritize the residency over the dental school, you don't want to sell yourself short or miss out on opportunities while in dental school, because you're tunnel visioning to that specialty where you're not there yet.
That's true. That makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for your answers.
Yeah. No, this is great.
You're welcome.
There's a lot that goes into it. Thank you so much, Luma, as always. Yeah, I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for your questions. I'll go ahead and stop the recording now. Thank you all so much.